Clara Evans woke up with a pounding headache. Her body sprawled across a plush gray sofa in a room she didn't recognize. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, casting a warm glow over sleek wooden floors and modern furniture. She blinked, rubbing her temples, trying to piece together where she was. The faint hum of Chicago traffic buzzed outside, a familiar sound that grounded her slightly. But then she heard it, a tiny giggle, followed by the clatter of plastic toys. Her eyes snapped open wide. Sitting on a colorful rug in the middle of the room was a little girl, about 2 years old, with curly brown hair and bright hazel eyes. The child looked up, grinned, and chirped, "Coo," in a high-pitched voice. Clara froze, her heart racing. "What in the world?" she muttered, sitting up too fast and wincing as her head throbbed harder. She scanned the room, a stylish apartment with exposed brick walls and a massive TV mounted above a fireplace. This wasn't her modest studio in Lincoln Park. Before she could process further, a man stumbled out of a hallway, his dark hair a mess, wearing a wrinkled t-shirt and jeans. He stopped dead in his tracks when he saw the little girl, then glanced at Clara with wide, confused eyes. "Who's that?" he blurted, pointing at the child. His voice was rough, like he'd just woken up too. Clara stared at him, her mind scrambling. He was tall, lean, with a scruffy beard and a vaguely familiar face. She'd seen him somewhere, but where? And why was she here with him and a random toddler? "I was about to ask you the same thing," Clara shot back, standing up and smoothing her rumpled dress from the night before. "Who are you, and whose kid is this?" The little girl giggled again, banging a toy car against a block, oblivious to the chaos unfolding around her. The man ran a hand through his hair, looking as lost as Clara felt. "I'm Jack Sullivan. This is my place, but I swear, I don't know who she is." He stepped closer to the child, squinting. "She looks kind of familiar, though. Maybe?" "I don't know." His voice rose with a mix of panic and disbelief. Clara crossed her arms, her patience thinning. "You don't know? How do you not know if there's a kid in your own apartment?" She took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Look, I don't have kids, and I'm pretty sure I didn't bring her here, so if she's not mine, is she yours?" Jack's jaw dropped, and he laughed, a sharp, incredulous sound. "Mine? No way! If I had a kid, the world would have ended by now. I can barely keep a plant alive." He knelt beside the girl, studying her face. "But seriously, she does remind me of someone. I just can't place it." Clara pinched the bridge of her nose, her mind racing. "Okay, let's back up. Why am I even here? What happened last night?" She vaguely remembered a charity event, fancy cocktails, and a crowded room. Jack's face clicked into place. He'd been there too. They'd bumped into each other, maybe talked. But after that, a total blank. Jack stood, scratching his neck. "The charity thing, downtown, right? I remember you. You were the one who yelled at me for spilling wine on your shoes." He smirked, then frowned. "We must have come back here together. But this?" He gestured at the little girl, who was now chewing on a toy block. "No clue." Clara groaned. "Great. So we're both clueless, and now we've got a mystery toddler on our hands." She stepped closer to the child, softening her tone. "Hey, sweetie, where'd you come from?" The girl looked up, giggled, and said, "Dejoy!" Clara blinked. Did she just say, "Go play"? Jack shrugged. "Beats me. Maybe she's a genius, or maybe someone dropped her off as a prank." He glanced around the room, as if expecting an answer to appear. "I don't know how she got in here, though. The door was locked when I checked." Clara's stomach twisted. "This isn't funny, Jack. What if she's lost? We can't just sit here guessing." She grabbed her phone from the sofa, hoping for clues, but the battery was dead. "Perfect, yours working." Jack pulled his phone from his pocket, frowning. "Yeah, but no missed calls or texts about a kid. This is nuts." He looked at Clara, then at the little girl, who smiled up at them like nothing was wrong. "What do we do? Call the cops?" Clara hesitated. "Maybe. But what if she belongs to someone you know? Let's figure out last night first." She studied Jack, his casual vibe screaming trouble. He didn't seem like a dad, but then again, she didn't know him. "You sure she's not yours?" Jack threw his hands up. "Positive. I'm not that guy. But I'll admit, She's got a Sullivan vibe. Maybe a cousin or something? He paused, then shook his head. Nah, no way, I'd remember. Clara sighed, sitting back on the sofa. Well, we're stuck with her until we sort this out. So, Mr. Sullivan, what's your next brilliant idea? Jack grinned despite the chaos, a spark of mischief in his eyes. Guess we're playing detective. And babysitter, you in? She rolled her eyes but nodded. Fine, but if this gets weirder, I'm out. The little girl clapped her hands, laughing, as if she'd just sealed their fate. Clara Evans stood in the middle of Jack Sullivan's Chicago apartment, her arms crossed, watching as the little girl, still nameless to them, toddled over to a pile of colorful blocks. The child's curls bounced with each step, and she hummed a tune Clara couldn't place. Jack paced nearby, his phone pressed to his ear, muttering to someone on the other end. Yeah, dude, I'm serious, there's a kid here. No, I didn't kidnap her. He hung up, tossing the phone onto the counter with a groan. Nobody knows anything. My buddies from last night are as clueless as we are. Clara picked up the empty wine glass she'd spotted on the coffee table, sniffing it. Well, this explains the headache. How much did we drink? She set it down and turned to Jack. We need to figure out how she got here. Start with what you remember. Jack flopped onto a leather armchair, rubbing his face. Okay, the charity event. It was at the Grand Plaza Hotel downtown. Fancy suits, bad music, lots of wine. I was there with some music industry folks, pitching a new track. You? Clara nodded, pieces of the night flickering back. I went with a couple coworkers. It was a fundraiser for a kid's hospital or something. I remember talking to people. Then you bumped into me and ruined my shoes. She shot him a mock glare, and he chuckled. Guilty as charged. You called me a clumsy oaf. I apologized, and we started chatting. You said you hated networking events. I said I hated ties. We bonded over that. Jack's grin faded as he glanced at the little girl. But after that? It's fuzzy. I think we kept drinking, maybe danced a little. Next thing I know, we're here. Clara frowned, her mind straining to fill the gaps. Yeah, I vaguely remember leaving with you. I was too tipsy to drive, and you said your place was close. But her? She pointed at the child, who was now stacking blocks into a wobbly tower. No memory of that. Jack stood and walked to the front door, checking the lock. Still secure, no sign of a break-in. He spotted a small blue backpack near the entryway, half hidden behind a plant. Wait, what's this? He grabbed it, unzipping it to reveal diapers, a bottle of milk, and a change of clothes. Okay, someone definitely left her here, with supplies. Clara joined him, peering into the bag. That's weirdly thoughtful for a drop-off. No note, though. She rummaged through the pockets, but found nothing. This is starting to feel like a bad movie. Who leaves a kid with no explanation? Jack shrugged, setting the bag down. Beats me. She's gotta belong to someone I know, right? She looks familiar, but I can't pin it down. He knelt beside the girl, softening his voice. Hey, kiddo, who brought you here? She looked up, giggled, and said, Dee Choi, clapping her hands. Clara smirked. She's adorable, but not helpful. Maybe she's too young to tell us anything useful. She glanced at Jack. You said she reminds you of someone. Family, maybe? Jack scratched his neck, thinking hard. Could be. I've got a big family, but I don't see them much. I'm always on the road, gigs and studios. My sister lives out in the suburbs, but we're not close. I've met her kid once or twice, but that was ages ago. He squinted at the girl. Now, it can't be. That kid was tiny back then. Clara raised an eyebrow. How long ago? Kids grow fast. She pulled her dead phone from her pocket, frustrated. If mine wasn't toast, I'd call my friend Jess. She was at the party. Maybe she saw something. Jack grabbed his phone again. Good idea. I'll try my guy, Pete. He's got a memory like a steel trap. He dialed, pacing as it rang. Pete, man, it's Jack. You remember last night? Yeah, the charity thing. Did I leave with a kid or what? He listened, then groaned. No, I'm not joking. There's a little girl in my apartment right now. He hung up, shaking his head. He says I left with you. That's it. Thought I was hitting on you. Clara blushed, then quickly changed the subject. Okay, so we left together. But what about after? Did we stop somewhere? Pick her up by accident? She tried to replay the night. A blurry image surfaced. stumbling out of the hotel, laughing with Jack, climbing into a cab. Then nothing. Jack snapped his fingers. The cab, maybe the driver knows something. I use this one guy a lot, Tony. He's got my number. He scrolled through his phone, finding the contact. Tony, hey, it's Jack Sullivan. You drove me home last night, right? Did I have a kid with me? He paused, frowning. Just me and a woman? No kid? You sure? He hung up, deflated. Tony says it was just us, dropped us off here around midnight. Clara sighed, sitting on the sofa. So, she got here after we did. Someone must have come in while we were passed out. She looked at the little girl, who was now hugging a stuffed bear from the backpack. She's not scared, though. That's odd. She trusts us. Jack nodded, watching her play. Yeah, she's too chill for a lost kid. Maybe she knows me somehow. He grabbed the backpack again, digging deeper. Come on, there's got to be something in here. A name, a phone number, anything. He pulled out a tiny jacket, a sippy cup, but still no note. Clara stood, pacing. This is insane. We can't keep guessing. If we don't figure it out soon, we need to call someone. Police, child services, something. She stopped, looking at Jack. Unless you're hiding something. You sure you don't have a secret kid stashed away? Jack laughed, loud and genuine. Trust me, Clara, my life's an open book. A messy one, sure, but no hidden chapters like that. He grinned at her. What about you? Any surprise offspring I should know about? She rolled her eyes. Very funny. No, my biggest responsibility is a houseplant, and it's barely surviving. She glanced at the girl, softening. But we can't just sit here. Let's retrace our steps. Maybe we missed something. Jack nodded, grabbing his keys. Agreed. We'll start with the basics. Food, diapers, then detective work. You good with that? He looked at Clara, his playful smirk returning. Partner. Clara sighed but smiled back. Fine, partner. But if this turns into a circus, I'm blaming you. The little girl clapped her hands, laughing as if she approved their shaky plan. Clara Evans watched Jack Sullivan wrestle with a carton of milk in his sleek Chicago kitchen, his brow furrowed in concentration. The little girl sat on the floor nearby, banging a plastic spoon against a toy car, her giggles filling the room. Jack tilted the carton over a bottle, spilling half the milk onto the counter. Seriously? He muttered, grabbing a towel. How do people do this every day? Clara leaned against the doorway, smirking. You're supposed to pour it slowly, genius, not drown the kitchen. She stepped forward, taking the carton from him. Here, let me. She filled the bottle with a steady hand, screwing the cap on tight. See? Not rocket science. Jack wiped his hands on his jeans, grinning. Fair enough. You're hired as official milk pourer. He picked up the bottle and handed it to the girl, who grabbed it eagerly and started drinking. She's got an appetite. That's a good sign, right? Clara nodded, watching the child sip contentedly. Yeah, she's happy, which makes this even weirder. Lost kids usually cry, don't they? She glanced around the apartment, still pristine except for the milk puddle. We need to keep her busy while we figure this out. Got any ideas? Jack scratched his neck, thinking. Well, I'm not exactly kid-equipped. My life's all guitars and late nights. But there's a park a block away. Fresh air might jog our memories. Or hers. He looked at the girl. You want to go play, kiddo? She looked up, smiled, and said, Dee-choy, clapping her hands. Clara laughed. That's a yes. Okay, park it is. But first we need to change her. She's got milk on her shirt now, thanks to you. She grabbed the blue backpack, pulling out a clean onesie with little stars on it. Hold her still. Jack scooped the girl up, holding her gently as she squirmed. Easy, little tornado. Stay put for 2 seconds. Clara knelt beside them, fumbling with the buttons. The girl grabbed a strand of Clara's hair, tugging playfully. Ouch! Clara yelped, laughing. She's strong! Jack chuckled. She's a fighter. Maybe she's mine after all. He winked, and Clara rolled her eyes, finishing the change. They stood, the girl now in fresh clothes, looking pleased with herself. Jack grabbed his keys. Ready, team? The walk to the park was quick, the Chicago streets buzzing with morning life. Clara carried the backpack, while Jack held the girl's hand, letting her toddle beside him. She pointed at a pigeon, giggling. and Jack mimicked the bird's strut, making her laugh harder. Clara watched, amused. "You're not bad with her, for a guy who doesn't do kids." Jack shrugged. "Beginner's luck, she's easy to please." They reached the park, a small green space with swings and a slide. Jack set the girl down and she ran straight for the sandbox, plopping onto the ground with a squeal. Clara sat on a bench nearby, keeping an eye on her. "Okay, let's think. Maybe someone at the party knows her." Jack joined her, stretching out his legs. "Could be. I was with a loud crowd last night. Producers, musicians, the usual. But I don't remember any kids around." He glanced at the girl, who was now patting sand into a lumpy pile. "She's got to be connected to someone I know. That face, it's nagging at me." Clara pulled her hair into a ponytail, the breeze cool against her neck. "I was with coworkers, mostly. No kids there, either. But we left together, so maybe we ran into someone after." She sighed. "I wish I remembered more. This is driving me crazy." Jack leaned back, watching a jogger pass by. "Same. My brain's a fog past the cab ride, but look at her, she's not freaked out. That's gotta mean something." A woman walking her dog stopped nearby, smiling at them. "What a cute family. She's got your eyes," she said to Jack, nodding at the girl. Clara's face turned pink and Jack laughed. "Thanks, but we're just babysitting, I think." The woman waved and moved on, leaving Clara flustered. "People are gonna keep saying that, aren't they?" Jack grinned. "Probably. You're doing a solid mom impression, though. I'd vote you for the role." He dodged as Clara swatted his arm, both of them laughing. The girl looked up from the sandbox, clapping her sandy hands as if cheering them on. Clara stood, brushing off her dress. "Okay, enough flattery. Let's get her back before she's covered in sand." She walked over, lifting the girl up. "Come on, you little messmaker." The child giggled, patting Clara's cheek with a gritty hand. "Oh, great! Now I'm sandy, too." Jack followed, hands in his pockets. "You wear it well. So, what's next?" "We fed her, played with her, still no clue who she is." They started back toward the apartment, the girl toddling between them, holding Clara's finger with one hand and Jack's with the other. Clara glanced at him. "We need to dig deeper. Check your phone again, call more people. Someone has to know something." She paused, softening. "You're not terrible at this, you know. The kid thing. I thought you'd panic more." Jack smirked. "I'm panicking inside, trust me. I don't do responsibility. My life's a playlist on shuffle, no repeats. Kids, that's a whole album I never signed up for." He looked at the girl, who smiled up at him. "But she's cool. Makes it hard to freak out." Clara nodded, understanding. "I get that. I like things predictable. Work, home, repeat. Kids are chaos. But I don't mind her either." She squeezed the girl's hand gently. "She's growing on me." They reached the apartment building, stepping into the elevator. Jack pressed the button, watching the girl bounce on her toes. "Same here. But we can't keep her forever. We've got to solve this." He glanced at Clara. "You're good with her, too. Ever think about it, the whole family deal?" Clara laughed, shaking her head. "Not really. I've got a plant that's barely alive. That's my limit." The elevator dinged, and they stepped out, the girl tugging them toward the door. "But today, it's not so bad." Jack unlocked the apartment, letting them in. "Agreed. Weirdest morning ever, but not bad." He set the backpack down, looking at Clara. "So, Detective Clara, what's our next move?" The girl ran to her blocks, plopping down with a happy sigh, leaving them to figure out the mysteries she'd brought into their lives. Clara Evans sat cross-legged on the rug in Jack Sullivan's Chicago apartment, stacking blocks with the little girl, while Jack rummaged through the kitchen for snacks. The child giggled, knocking over Clara's tower with a swift kick, her curls bouncing as she clapped. Clara laughed, shaking her head. "You're a destroyer, aren't you?" The girl grinned, grabbing another block, oblivious to the mystery still hanging over them. Jack emerged with a bag of crackers, tossing it onto the coffee table. "Found these. They're not expired, so we're golden." He plopped onto the sofa, watching the scene. "She's got energy. How long till she crashes?" Clara glanced at him, smirking. "Longer than us, probably. We're the ones running on fumes." She stood, brushing off her hands. Okay, we've played, we've fed her. Time to get serious. There's got to be something we missed. She eyed the blue backpack still sitting by the door. Let's check that again. Maybe we overlooked a clue. Jack nodded, grabbing the bag and dumping its contents onto the table. Diapers, a bottle, a tiny jacket, the stuffed bear. He shook each item, hoping for a hidden note. Nada. Whoever left her was thorough, or lazy. He tossed the empty bag aside, then paused, squinting at the floor. Wait, what's that? A crumpled piece of paper peeked out from under the sofa, half hidden by the rug. Clara's eyes widened. Jackpot! She dove for it, snatching the paper and smoothing it out. Her voice rose as she read aloud. Jack, I had to take a last-minute night shift. Can you watch Zoe till morning? I'll pick her up then. Thanks, Rachel. She looked up, stunned. Rachel? Jack stared at the note, his jaw dropping. Rachel's my sister? Wait, Zoe, this is Zoe? He turned to the little girl who was now hugging her bear, rocking back and forth. That's my niece? No way! He ran a hand through his hair, disbelief washing over his face. She's so big now. Clara blinked, processing. Your niece? So, she's not some random kid? Why didn't you recognize her? She handed him the note, crossing her arms. This just got a lot less mysterious and a lot more ridiculous. Jack took the paper, rereading it as if it might change. I haven't seen her in forever. Rachel lives out in the suburbs, like an hour away. I'm always busy with work, gigs, you know. Last time I saw Zoe, she was tiny, crawling around. That was over a year ago. He looked at Zoe, shaking his head. She's walking and talking now. How'd that happen so fast? Clara smirked, sitting on the sofa. Kids grow, Jack. You'd know that if you visited more. She softened, curious. So Rachel dropped her off? Why didn't she call first? Jack pulled out his phone, scrolling through his call log. She did! Look, a missed call from her last night around 11. I must have been out of it. He tapped the screen, dialing her back. Let's get the full story. He put it on speaker, and after 2 rings, a tired voice answered. Jack, you okay? Rachel sounded exhausted, the hum of a hospital in the background. Rachel, yeah, I'm fine, but what's with Zoe being here? I woke up with her in my apartment. Jack's voice was a mix of relief and exasperation. Clara leaned closer, listening. Rachel sighed. Oh, thank God she's with you. I had a night shift pop up last minute at the hospital. No babysitter, no warning. I called you and you mumbled something like, sure, bring her over. I figured you were half asleep, but I was desperate. My coworker Jen dropped her off with the bag. Didn't she leave the note? Jack groaned. She did, but it fell under the sofa. I didn't see it till now, and I was trashed last night, Rach. Why'd you trust me with her? Rachel laughed, dry and sharp. Because you're her uncle, dummy. I didn't have a choice. Besides, I thought it'd be good for you. You're always off in your music world, never around. Zoe's your family too, you know. She paused, her tone softening. I didn't mean to scare you. Is she okay? Clara jumped in. She's fine. Hi, I'm Clara. I've been helping Jack keep her alive today. She smiled at Zoe, who waved her bear at them. Clara, oh, nice to meet you. Thanks for stepping up. Jack's hopeless with responsibility, Rachel teased. I'll swing by soon. My shift's almost done. Jack rolled his eyes. Thanks for the vote of confidence, sis, but yeah, she's good. Eating, playing, the works. He glanced at Clara, mouthing, hopeless? She stifled a laugh. Rachel's voice brightened. Great. And Jack? Maybe this is your chance to step up a little. Zoe's growing up and I could use you around more. Think about it. She hung up, leaving a quiet hum in the room. Clara looked at Jack, raising an eyebrow. So, your sister's teaching you a lesson through a toddler drop-off? That's bold. She sat back, amused. You really didn't recognize her, huh? Jack flopped beside her, staring at Zoe. Nope. She was a baby last time I saw her. Tiny, drooling, the whole deal. Now she's a person. It's wild. He chuckled, shaking his head. Rachel's sneaky, using Zoe to guilt-trip me into family time? Clara grinned. It's working, though. You've been pretty decent with her today, even with the milk disaster. She nudged him, and he smirked. Yeah, well, I had help. You're the real MVP here. Jack watched Zoe stack a block, her focus intense. But man, I feel dumb. My own niece, and I thought she was some lost kid. Clara laughed, loud and free. You should have seen your face when I asked if she was yours. Pure panic. She leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand. So, mystery solved. What now? Wait for Rachel? Jack nodded, stretching out. Guess so. She'll be here soon. Then it's back to normal, I suppose. He paused, glancing at Clara. Unless you want to stick around. You're good company even with the chaos. Clara smiled, surprised by the warmth in his voice. Maybe. It's been a weird day, but not awful. She looked at Zoe, who yawned, rubbing her eyes. She's getting sleepy. Should we put her down for a nap? Jack stood, scooping Zoe up gently. Yeah, let's try the guest room. She's earned it. He carried her down the hall, Clara following with the bear. They tucked her into a small bed, the girl clutching her toy as her eyes fluttered shut. Back in the living room, Jack flopped onto the sofa again. Mission accomplished. We survived. Clara sat beside him, exhaling. Barely, but yeah, we did. She met his gaze, a quiet understanding passing between them. The twist of Zoe's identity had flipped their day upside down, but somehow it felt right. Clara Evans leaned against the armrest of Jack Sullivan's sofa, the quiet of his Chicago apartment settling around them like a soft blanket. Zoe napped in the guest room, her tiny snores faintly audible through the open door. The chaos of the morning had faded, leaving a strange calm in its wake. Jack sprawled across the cushions, his legs stretched out, staring at the ceiling. Well, we made it. No disasters. Yet, he said, his voice light but tinged with something deeper. Clara smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Yeah, we're naturals. Who knew? She glanced at the blue backpack, now neatly packed by the door. Your sister's lucky to have you step up, even if it was by accident. Jack chuckled, sitting up. Lucky? She'd say I'm a liability, but today wasn't so bad. He looked at Clara, his grin softening. You were the real hero. I'd have drowned in milk without you. His eyes held hers a moment longer than usual, and Clara felt a flutter she couldn't quite name. Before she could respond, the doorbell buzzed, sharp and insistent. Jack jumped up, brushing his hands on his jeans. That's Rachel. Showtime. He opened the door, and a woman stepped in, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun, scrubs wrinkled from a long shift. She carried a tired smile, her eyes lighting up when she saw Clara. You must be Clara. I'm Rachel, Jack's much wiser sister, she said, extending a hand. Clara shook it, liking her warmth instantly. Thanks for keeping this clown in line. And Zoe? Clara nodded toward the hall. Napping. She's been a champ all day. Rachel peeked into the guest room, her shoulders relaxing as she saw her daughter curled up with the stuffed bear. Jack crossed his arms, leaning against the wall. She's fine, Rach. We fed her, played with her, the whole deal. You owe Clara big time, though. I was useless half the morning. Rachel laughed, stepping back into the living room. I believe it. But seriously, Clara, you're a saint. Jack's hopeless with anything that doesn't plug into an amp. She winked at him and he rolled his eyes. And Jack, you surprise me. Maybe there's hope for you yet. Clara smiled, grabbing her purse from the sofa. It was fun, in a weird way, but I should get going. You've got this now. She felt a pang as she said it, like she was leaving something unfinished. She pulled a scrap of paper from her bag, scribbling a quick note. Thanks for a wild day. Good luck with the uncle gig. She handed it to Jack, avoiding his gaze. Jack took it, his brow furrowing. You're bailing already. Thought we'd celebrate surviving this. His tone was casual, but there was a hint of disappointment Clara couldn't miss. Rachel scooped up Zoe's backpack, smirking. Oh, I see what's happening here. Clara, you've tamed him in one day. That's a record. She hoisted the bag over her shoulder. I'll grab Zoe and get out of your hair. Jack, call me later. And Clara, you're welcome back any time. Clara laughed, waving as Rachel disappeared down the hall. She's great. You're lucky to have her. She turned to Jack, forcing a smile. Take care, okay? Don't spill milk on Zoe next time. Jack nodded, slipping the note into his pocket. Yeah, I'll try. See you around, Clara. His voice was quiet, and for a moment she thought he might say more, but Rachel returned, cradling a sleepy Zoe, and the moment passed. Clara slipped out the door, the cool Chicago air hitting her as she stepped onto the street. She walked a few blocks to her favorite cafe, a cozy spot with brick walls and warm lights. Settling into a corner booth, she ordered a latte, staring out the window as the city hummed around her. The day replayed in her mind, Jack's goofy grin, Zoe's giggles, the way they'd stumbled through it together. It felt strange to be alone now, like a piece was missing. She shook her head, sipping her coffee. Get a grip, Clara. It was one crazy morning, not a life change. Back at the apartment, Jack sat on the sofa, Zoe's blocks still scattered across the rug. Rachel had left minutes ago, Zoe waving sleepily from her arms. The silence pressed in heavier than he'd expected. He pulled Clara's note from his pocket, reading it again. Wild day, huh? He muttered, smiling faintly. He'd played with Zoe before Rachel took her, lifting her onto his shoulders as she laughed. It had felt good, natural even. But now, without Clara's steady presence, the room seemed empty. He grabbed his phone, scrolling aimlessly, then stopped. She's gone, and I'm sitting here like an idiot. He thought about her laugh, the way she'd taken charge with Zoe, how she'd made the chaos bearable. Jack wasn't the type to chase feelings. His life was fast, free, no strings. But Clara? She'd gotten under his skin in a way he couldn't shake. He stood, grabbing his jacket. Screw it. He remembered her mentioning this cafe once during their park chat, a place she loved for its quiet. It was a long shot, but he had to try. He jogged the few blocks, his breath fogging in the crisp air, and pushed open the cafe door. There she was, in a booth by the window, staring into her cup like it held all the answers. Jack approached, heart pounding. Hey, Clara looked up, startled, her eyes widening. Mind if I sit? He slid into the seat across from her before she could answer, his words tumbling out. Look, I'm not good at this. Responsibility, feelings, any of it. But today, with you and Zoe, it was different. I don't want you to walk away like it's nothing. Clara set her cup down, her voice soft. Jack, it was just a day, a weird, fun day. You don't have to make it more. But her eyes betrayed her, flickering with something unspoken. He leaned forward, earnest. Maybe I don't have to, but I want to. You make me want to try, Clara. Stay in my mess a little longer, please. His usual smirk was gone, replaced by a raw honesty she hadn't seen before. Clara studied him, her resolve wavering. Your trouble, you know that? She smiled, small but real. I'm not saying yes yet, but I'm not leaving either. Jack grinned, relief washing over him, and for the first time that day the chaos felt exactly right. Clara Evans stood beside Jack Sullivan in a quiet Chicago park, the late afternoon sun casting a golden glow over the trees. A few days had passed since their wild morning with Zoe, and now they were back, the little girl toddling between them. Rachel had asked Jack to watch her one last time while she sorted her work schedule, and he'd texted Clara without hesitation. Park date with the tornado? You in? She'd said yes, surprising herself with how easy the answer came. Zoe ran ahead, her curls bouncing as she darted toward the swings. She turned, grinning, and called out, "Co!" waving Clara over. Clara laughed, jogging to catch up. Okay, I'm coming." She lifted Zoe onto the swing, pushing gently as the girl kicked her legs, squealing with delight. Jack joined them, hands in his pockets, watching with a soft smile. "She likes you," he said, stepping closer. "More than me, probably. I'm just the goofy guy who spills stuff." His tone was light, but his eyes held a warmth Clara hadn't noticed before. Clara smirked, keeping the swing moving. "She's got good taste. You're not so bad, though. You've got the goofy part down. Zoe giggled, as if agreeing, and Clara felt a strange contentment settle in her chest. This wasn't her usual routine, tidy and predictable, but it felt right. Jack took over pushing the swing, his hands brushing Clara's as they swapped places. You know, I meant what I said at the cafe. I'm not perfect. My life's a mess half the time. But you make me want to figure it out. He glanced at her, his usual swagger replaced by something earnest. Stick around, Clara. Let's see where this goes. Clara met his gaze, her heart skipping a beat. She'd spent days replaying his words, weighing the chaos against the pull she felt. You're a lot, Jack Sullivan. But I'm not running yet. She smiled, real and unguarded. Let's take it slow, okay? No more surprised toddlers for a while. Jack laughed, loud and free. Deal. One crisis at a time. He gave Zoe an extra push, her laughter ringing out across the park. She's the boss, though. We're just along for the ride. They moved to a bench as Zoe tired out, letting her plop onto the grass with her stuffed bear. Clara sat close to Jack, their shoulders almost touching, the air cool against their skin. Zoe crawled over, climbing into Clara's lap, her eyes drooping. She mumbled, snuggling in. Clara wrapped an arm around her, surprised by how natural it felt. Jack watched, his grin softening. You're a natural. She's claimed you. He reached out, hesitating, then took Clara's free hand, lacing their fingers together. I'm not big on promises, but I'll try with you. For real. Clara squeezed his hand, warmth spreading through her. Good enough for now. She leaned her head against his shoulder, Zoe dozing between them. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and the park grew quiet around them. They stayed like that, hand in hand, Zoe's soft breaths blending with the rustle of leaves. It wasn't a grand declaration or a perfect ending, just a moment that felt like a start. Jack glanced at Clara, his voice low. No more running, right? She nodded, smiling. No more running. And as the light faded, they sat together, a little family born from the strangest of days.